The worst calls always come at the worst times. Mine came right as I was about to start the biggest presentation of my career. My phone vibrating against the conference room table like an angry hornet. My name is Harper, and I've spent my entire life dropping everything for my family's emergencies. Usually, they aren't actually emergencies at all. Harper, you need to come home right now, my mother's voice crackled through the phone. That familiar tone of barely contained hysteria making my stomach clench. It's Ivy. She's not doing well. I glanced at the boardroom full of executives waiting for my marketing pitch, then at the presentation I'd spent 3 months perfecting. Mom, I'm literally in the middle of. Your sister needs you. Family comes first, Harper. You know that. Of course. Family first. It's been my mother's mantra since we were kids, though somehow it only ever seemed to apply when Ivy needed something. What happened? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't justify derailing my career. She's having one of her episodes. The doctors are concerned. I can't handle this alone. Her voice cracked, and I could picture her pacing our childhood kitchen, twisting the phone cord like she always did during crisis calls. I caught my boss's eye through the conference room window. He tapped his watch, reminding me we were already running late. 5 years of climbing the corporate ladder, and here I was, about to throw it all away because my sister had another episode. I'll call you back in an hour, I said, hanging up before she could protest. My phone immediately lit up with texts. Mom, she's asking for you. Mom, please Harper. Mom, don't be selfish. I turned my phone face down and gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady my breathing. The familiar guilt started creeping in, but something else was there too, anger. Hot, sharp anger that had been building for 29 years. Everything okay? My colleague Sarah whispered, concern etched on her face. Fine, I replied, straightening my blazer. Just family stuff. As I stood to begin my presentation, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my father. Harper, please come home. Your mother's right, Ivy needs all of us right now. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, seeing my reflection in the black glass. The same face that had always been in Ivy's shadow, the responsible daughter who never quite measured up. Not this time. I switched off my phone completely and picked up my presentation clicker. For once in my life, I was choosing myself. But even as I launched into my carefully rehearsed pitch, I knew this decision would cost me. It always did when I put myself before Ivy. I pulled into my parents' driveway at midnight, exhausted from the 5-hour drive and still wearing my presentation outfit. The house looked exactly as it always had, pristine white exterior, perfectly manicured lawn, and every light blazing like a beacon of emergency. My mother burst through the front door before I could even grab my overnight bag. Finally! What took you so long? We've been worried sick. I bit back a response about my successful presentation, knowing she wouldn't care. Where's Ivy? Upstairs, resting. She had another panic attack, but of course, you wouldn't know since you ignored our calls all afternoon. Following her into the house, I noticed empty wine glasses in the living room and heard laughter drifting down from upstairs. Some emergency. Harper! Ivy's voice called out. She appeared at the top of the stairs, looking perfectly fine in designer pajamas, phone in hand. You didn't have to come all this way. Mom's being dramatic again. Our mother gasped. Dramatic? You were hyperventilating just hours ago. Because you kept hovering and making everything worse, Ivy rolled her eyes, then smiled at me. But since you're here, want to watch a movie? Jake's working late again. The familiar pattern clicked into place, Ivy feeling neglected by her husband, manufacturing a crisis, our mother amplifying it. And me dropping everything to rush home. I gripped my car keys tighter, the metal biting into my palm. Actually, I have an early meeting tomorrow. I should get to a hotel. Don't be ridiculous, my father emerged from his study, looking tired. Your room's ready. Your mother's been preparing it all evening. Of course she had. Probably right after my presentation started. I got that promotion, I said, testing the waters. The one I've been working toward all year. That's nice, dear, my mother replied absently, already heading upstairs with a fresh glass of water for Ivy. But family comes first, remember? My father offered a weak smile. Congratulations, sweetheart. Maybe we can celebrate another time? I watched them all disappear upstairs, leaving me alone in the foyer with my work bag and my achievement that apparently meant nothing. My phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. How bad is it this time? I started typing the usual, but stopped. Something had shifted during that presentation when I'd chosen myself over their drama. The usual wasn't going to cut it anymore. We need to talk, I wrote back. About the wedding. And about setting some boundaries with my family. Upstairs, I heard my mother's voice. Harper, could you run to the store? Ivy's craving her special tea. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. This time, I didn't look back. I found Ivy sitting on our old tire swing at 3 in the morning, mascara streaked down her face. She wasn't wearing a coat despite the autumn chill, and something about her vulnerability made my anger waver. Jake's been cheating on me, she said before I could speak. 4 months. With his secretary. How cliché is that? I sat on the ground beside the swing, leaves crunching under me. How did you find out? His credit card statements. Mom's been helping me track his spending. Ivy laughed bitterly. Apparently, that's what those late meetings were. Dinner at Alessandro's, hotel rooms, jewelry I never received. The mention of our mother made my jaw clench. Is that what this emergency was about? Getting me here for this? No, I really did have a panic attack. Finding out your perfect marriage is a lie tends to do that. She kicked at the ground, setting the swing in motion. But that's not even the worst part. I waited, watching her swing back and forth like we used to as kids, before everything got so complicated. Mom's been borrowing money from Jake. A lot of money. She said it was for my medical bills, but I checked, there aren't any recent bills. The money's just gone. The pieces started falling into place, Mom's new car, the renovated kitchen, the desperate need to keep Ivy's marriage intact. My stomach turned. Does Dad know? Ivy shook her head. Mom's been intercepting the bank statements. Jake threatened to tell him everything unless I agreed to couples counseling, but... She stopped swinging abruptly. I don't want to fix this, Harper. I want out. Then leave him. It's not that simple. Mom says. Stop. I stood up, leaves sticking to my pajama pants. Stop letting Mom decide your life. She's using you, Ivy. She always has. That's not fair. She's just trying to. To what? Control everything? Keep you dependent on her? Make sure I'm always the bad guy who doesn't care enough about family? Ivy's silence told me I'd hit a nerve. I have to show you something, she said finally, pulling out her phone. She opened her banking app, showing me a series of large transfers. Mom's been moving money from my account too. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones. She said she'd pay it back, but... I stared at the screen, fury building in my chest. All those guilt trips, all those emergency calls, all designed to keep us too distracted to notice what was really happening. Does Jake know about this too? Ivy nodded. He found out last week. That's why he's threatening to tell Dad. He says either Mom repays everything, or he exposes everything. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the same scared little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. But this time, the storm was our mother's making. We need to talk to Uncle Jack, I said. Now. Uncle Jack's face grew grimmer with each bank statement we showed him. We'd gathered in his home office at dawn, the morning sun casting long shadows across his desk. Your mother's taken close to $200,000 between the two of you, he said, removing his reading glasses. And that's not counting what she borrowed from Jake. I paced behind Ivy's chair, my engagement ring catching the light. We have to tell Dad. There's something else, Ivy whispered, pulling an envelope from her purse. Mom asked me to give you this. Inside was a letter, written in our mother's perfect cursive. Harper, darling, I know this is a lot to ask, but Ivy needs you now more than ever. Would you consider postponing your wedding? Just for a few months, until things settle. The deposits can be moved, and Ethan will understand. He knows how important family is. The paper crumpled in my fist. She's unbelievable. She says she can't handle everything alone, Ivy added softly. With my divorce coming and the financial situation. The financial situation she created? I spun toward her. Don't you see what she's doing? She's trying to keep us both trapped, dependent on her. And now she wants me to put my life on hold again? Uncle Jack cleared his throat. There's more. Your father's business, the one your mother handles the books for? I've been looking into some irregularities. My stomach dropped. What kind of irregularities? The kind that could land someone in prison. He spread out more papers. She's been cooking the books for years, hiding her withdrawals. If Jake exposes this. My phone buzzed, Ethan calling. I let it go to voicemail, remembering our conversation about starting our own family soon. How could I tell him his future mother-in-law might be headed to prison? I can fix this, Ivy said suddenly. If I stay with Jake, convince him to keep quiet. No. The word came out sharp, final. We're not covering for her anymore. This ends now. Uncle Jack nodded slowly. I'll help you talk to your father. But Harper, you should know, once this comes out, your mother will try to blame everyone but herself. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my wedding plans, my future with Ethan, the life I'd worked so hard to build. Then I thought about my mother's manipulations, the years of guilt and emotional blackmail. I'm done being the good daughter who sacrifices everything, I said, reaching for my phone. It's time Mom faces the consequences of her own actions. Ivy grabbed my wrist. Wait! She's still our mother. No, I replied, dialing our father's number. She's our puppet master. And I'm cutting the strings. The text arrived at 3 a.m, Jake left. Taking the kids to Mom's. Need you here now. I stared at my phone, Ethan's steady breathing beside me, a reminder of the life I was trying to build, a life away from my family's chaos. But before I could respond, another message appeared. Your sister is having a complete breakdown, my mother wrote. I need you to take the children for a few weeks while we sort this out. I sat up in bed, my hands shaking. A few weeks? I have a job, Mom. A life. Family comes first. Always. 3 dots appeared, then, unless you want me to tell your father about that incident in college? The one you begged me to keep quiet about? The old familiar fear crept in, but something else rose with it, rage. Pure, clarifying rage. I called Uncle Jack. "They're trying to blackmail me now," I said when he answered. "Mom's threatening to tell Dad about something from my past. To force me to take Ivy's kids." "Your DUI?" he asked quietly. "Harper, your father already knows. He's the one who paid the fine." The world tilted sideways. Another lie, another manipulation exposed. "There's more," Uncle Jack continued. "Jake called me before he left. Your mother's been pressuring him to invest in some scheme. When he refused, she threatened to reveal his affair to his law partners." My phone buzzed again, Ivy this time. "The kids keep asking for their dad. Please, I can't do this alone." I thought about my niece and nephew, innocent casualties in this war of manipulation. But I also thought about the pattern, how giving in now would only enable more chaos later. "I'm done," I texted back. "I love you, Ivy, but I won't let Mom use your kids as pawns." Then I blocked both their numbers. Ethan stirred beside me. "Everything okay?" I showed him the messages, including my mother's threat. "I'm probably going to lose my entire family over this." He sat up, fully awake now. "Maybe it's time they lost you." My engagement ring caught the moonlight, and I remembered why I'd fallen in love with him, his clarity, his unwavering support of my boundaries. "My father knew," I whispered. "All this time, Mom made me feel like I owed her for keeping my secret, but Dad knew." "What are you going to do?" I reached for my phone one last time, composing a message to my father. "We need to talk. About Mom, about the business, about everything. No more secrets." Then I turned off my phone completely. Tomorrow would bring more chaos, more guilt, more manipulation. But for the first time in my life, I was ready to face it, not as the family fixer, but as someone fighting for her own future. The family dinner was my father's idea. "One last chance to talk things through," he'd said. I should have known better. I arrived to find my mother had invited our entire extended family, turning what should have been a private discussion into a public tribunal. Aunt Susan, Uncle Mike, even my grandmother, all seated around the dining room table like a jury. "We're just worried about you, dear," my mother said, passing the potatoes. All this talk about exposing family secrets, threatening legal action. "It's not like you." Ivy sat across from me, her children conspicuously absent. Her eyes were red-rimmed, accusing. "Jake's lawyer called today. He's filing for full custody." The room went silent. I felt every eye turn to me, waiting for my reaction. Waiting for me to fix everything, like always. "That's terrible," my mother continued, her voice dripping with concern. "If only someone could help with the children while this gets sorted out. Someone who doesn't have such demanding work hours." I gripped my fork tighter. "Don't. Your sister needs you, Harper," Aunt Susan chimed in. "Family comes first?" I cut her off. "Like when Mom stole from Ivy's accounts. Or when she blackmailed Jake. Was that putting family first?" My father's fork clattered against his plate. "Harper, please." "No." I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. "I'm done pretending. Mom's been stealing from all of us, manipulating us, and you've all enabled it. Even you, Dad. Especially you." "How dare you?" my mother whispered, but her eyes showed no surprise, only calculation. After everything I've sacrificed. Sacrificed? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You mean like the money you sacrificed from Dad's business? Should we talk about those books you've been cooking? The color drained from my father's face. Ivy gasped. But my mother just smiled, that same serene, controlling smile she'd worn my entire life. If you do this, she said quietly, if you destroy this family, don't expect to be welcomed back. Your wedding next month? Consider it cancelled. Your sister's children? They'll grow up never knowing their aunt. Is that what you want? I looked around the table, at my father's defeated posture, at Ivy's tears. At the relatives who'd watched this dysfunction play out for years and said nothing. This was my inheritance, secrets, guilt, and endless manipulation. What I want, I said, pulling out an envelope of bank statements, is the truth. And if none of you are brave enough to face it, I'll do it alone. I dropped the envelope on the table and walked out, my mother's voice following me, if you leave now, Harper, don't come back. For the first time in my life, that threat felt like freedom. Uncle Jack found me in his study at midnight, staring at years of financial records spread across his desk. Your mother's here, he said quietly. She knows I helped you get the documents. I didn't look up. Let her in. My mother swept into the room like she owned it, perfectly composed despite the late hour. I suppose you think you're being clever, digging up all this ancient history. Ancient? I pushed forward a bank statement dated last week. You transferred $50,000 from Dad's business account yesterday. Where's the money going, Mom? She perched on the edge of a leather chair, smoothing her skirt. Everything I've done has been for this family. To maintain our status, our reputation. To maintain your control, I corrected, standing up. But it's over. Jake's lawyer has copies of everything. So does the IRS. For the first time, I saw real fear crack through her facade. You wouldn't dare. I already did. My voice was steady, even as my hands shook. An hour ago. Then you've destroyed this family, she hissed, rising. Your father will lose everything. Ivy's custody battle will show that her husband was being blackmailed by her mother. I moved around the desk, facing her directly. The truth is coming out, all of it. She slapped me. The sound echoed in the quiet room, but I didn't flinch. You ungrateful child, she whispered. After everything I've sacrificed. You sacrificed nothing, Uncle Jack interrupted, stepping forward. You stole from your husband, manipulated your daughters, and nearly bankrupted this family to feed your own ego. My mother's laugh was brittle. And you're so innocent, Jack? Should we discuss the real reason you never married? The secrets I've kept for you? No more secrets, I said firmly. No more manipulation. It ends tonight. She turned to me, suddenly soft, maternal. Harper, sweetheart, we can fix this. Together. Just tell them you made a mistake, that you misunderstood. The only mistake, I replied, was letting you convince me that love means sacrifice. That family means submission. That I somehow owed you my life because you gave me birth. Her mask cracked completely. You'll regret this. When you're alone, when your precious Ethan realizes what kind of person would betray her own mother. He already knows. I pulled out my phone, showing her the recording icon. He's known everything for months. We all have. We were just waiting for you to go too far. The silence that followed was deafening. In it, I saw the moment she realized she'd lost, not just control, but everything she'd spent decades building. "You're not welcome at my wedding," I said quietly. "Or in my life. Ever again." She straightened, dignity wrapping around her like armor. "Then you no longer have a mother." "No," I agreed. "I have something better. Freedom." My wedding day dawned clear and bright, the kind of autumn morning that feels like a fresh start. Uncle Jack walked me down the aisle, past rows of friends and chosen family. My mother's absence felt less like a void and more like breathing room. The ceremony was everything I'd wanted: simple, honest, free from manipulation and drama. When Ethan said his vows, his voice steady and sure, I finally understood what real love looked like. Not sacrifice, not obligation, but choice. During the reception, my father appeared unexpectedly, looking older and somehow smaller without my mother's presence. "I signed the divorce papers yesterday," he said, handing me an envelope. "And I'm cooperating with the investigation. Everything's coming out now, the money, the lies, all of it." Inside the envelope was a letter, his handwriting shaky but determined. "Harper, I watched you grow up fighting for air in your mother's shadow, and I did nothing. I told myself I was keeping the peace, protecting the family. But all I did was enable the poison to spread. You were braver than I ever was. You chose truth over comfort, integrity over false peace. I'm proud of you, even if I don't deserve to be. I hope someday you'll let me try to be the father you always deserved. Love. Dad." I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my bouquet. "Is Ivy okay?" "She's in therapy. Real therapy this time, not your mother's manufactured crises. The custody arrangement with Jake is complicated, but they're working it out." He hesitated. "She misses you." "I miss her too," I admitted. "But I can't be her safety net anymore." He nodded, understanding finally showing in his eyes. "Sometimes love means letting go." The DJ announced the first dance, and Ethan appeared at my side, his hand warm and steady in mine. As we moved across the dance floor, I caught glimpses of our future, a life built on trust rather than manipulation, strength rather than sacrifice. Later that night, as we drove away from the reception, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My mother's new account, probably. I deleted it without reading it. "No regrets?" Ethan asked, watching me. I thought about the cost of freedom, the family I'd lost, the truth I'd exposed, the boundaries I'd finally learned to draw. But I also thought about what I'd gained: self-respect, real love, and the courage to choose my own path. "No regrets," I said, and meant it. The road ahead stretched out, dark but full of possibility. For the first time in my life, I wasn't anyone's savior or victim or obligation. I was just Harper. And that was enough.